I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi.
We have the most beautiful state and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and people are leaving.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up. Oh, quiet.
He's the chairman of the San Francisco GOP, and he's running against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Step back, everyone.
All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the John Dennis Report. Good to have you today. Let's see if we can get a little organized here. Yeah, it's funny. I was just looking at clips of a clip of an exchange between Jen Psaki, the press secretary for Biden. I guess that's her title. Spokesperson for the White House, whatever it is. You know what I'm talking about. And she, let's see if I can pull this up here real quick. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I've noticed with her that, of course, the left adores her, but she's been, I thought, especially at the beginning, an unmitigated train wreck. And not only that, but, you know, I was trying to think of her in relation to Sarah Huckabee and of course, Kayleigh McEnany. And with those two, I felt like there was, you know, they were tough and they pushed back, but they were sort of witty, especially Kayleigh McEnany, and they weren't mean-spirited. But when you listen to this Jen Psaki, not only is she totally and completely untransparent, opaque, but she's also you know, just condescending, sort of nasty, you know, takes a nasty approach. Like if you hear the questions that come from this Peter Doocy, who's in the White House, who incidentally does an okay job, not a great job, but an okay job in that position. It's very different than the kinds of questions that Kayleigh McEnany was fielding from the press in terms of tone. You know, Doocy's asking legitimate questions from a certain point of view, and you know, she's just nasty. It's just really unappealing. And I've got this clip queued up. Can people see that or no?
They can't get it.
No, I don't want. You know what? I don't want to play. I don't want to give her any time. But just anyway, just when you get, it's not worth it. It's just not on the schedule, and I just wanted to make note of it. She doesn't like challenging questions. Sort of reminds me of Nancy Pelosi in that regard. You know, they don't like challenging questions. I don't mind challenging questions. And you know, one of the things that I heard the other day, I forget who said it, but they were saying that you know, that rational people are more likely to get weeded out first and to get, you know, get killed off first in you know, tough situations, just because, you know, they're sort of weaker politically, because those are the people that you can reason with, you can predict where they're going. It's sort of the mean-spirited people that sort of rise to the top, and that is certainly true of Washington. You know, it makes me wonder if I shouldn't be a little bit more vicious in this game, really go after people. But in any event, Jen Psaki, keep an eye on that. She's just a good representation of I think the Biden administration, and that they are that they're bad people, mean-spirited. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to the next topic, which is how the boycott of Georgia has really backfired. And you'll see that now this was a really bad idea. First of all, the fact that Coca-Cola and Delta, both companies headquartered in Georgia, came out and went after the Georgia State Legislature for putting in some voter integrity laws into place. And by the way, expanding some voter options as well. But the fact that they were uniformly negative against it just exposed how clearly the big corporations are in the grips of the Democrat Party. they're just mouthpieces and muscle, frankly, for the Democrat agenda. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's somehow tied into that kind of mean, irrational thing that I was just talking about. But, how did it happen that corporations all became sort of leftist, the big ones? They all adopt the agenda. They've all fallen in line with the woke agenda, and so now when the Democrats call on them, they ask them to bark. They bark, and that's what's happened here. And it's interesting. I just saw an article with Stacey Abrams where she was sort of backing off calls for boycotting Georgia, but at the same time telling corporations to keep applying pressure. So it's kind of a funny thing. She's trying to have her cake and eat it too. So where does it start? Well, so MLB, so Coke comes out and they say they're opposed to it. Delta Airlines say they're opposed to the new voter integrity law in election integrity law in Georgia. And then, of course, baseball pulls out their Major League Baseball All-Star game. And they're just just sort of doing the bidding of the Democrats, but it has absolutely backfired. There are boycott Coke movements online, boycott Delta, but really the big thing is that people are beginning to realize and talk about it at a little more macro, a little sort of step up level, where they're beginning to realize, hey, we've really got to find companies that are either politically neutral or support the things that we believe in. And we're moving towards an economy where, your political views are going to be reflected in what products you consume, how you conduct yourself, with which companies you do business. This is what the Democrats are pushing us towards. And I think a lot of people have been reluctant to engage in the sort of the boycott business. Sorry, people are texting me. But now you're starting to see that that this is the direction in which we're moving. And so as a result, the Democrats are walking back their boycotts. As I just mentioned, Stacey Abrams was sort of having her cake and eating it too, no pun intended against her. But and you're seeing other people, other Democrats starting, walking back this whole business of initiating corporate boycotts of the state, because these companies lose their strength if they lose customers. And for God's sakes, why is anybody even consuming Coke anymore? I've done it recently too, but I swear to Christ, God, I'll never do it again. They are just despicable. It's despicable what they've done, and that's how a lot of people feel. And we're beginning to see that the Democrats are, their plan is becoming exposed, which sort of takes me to my next topic. I'm going to kind of jump over here for a second. I don't have anything in particular, any article or anything, to show in this on this topic. Oh, by the way, before I move off this topic, let's move over to the Rubio comment. By the way, can you pull that one up? Yeah, people see that?
They do.
Oh, good, yeah. So here's another example, and actually, even Creep Morning Joe Scarborough, I'm going to come back to him in a second. Even he was saying, doesn't Rubio have a point here? Here, the commissioner of baseball is a member at Augusta National, which is in Georgia, and is he going to drop his membership there? And let me just tell you, if you're not a golfer, being a member at Augusta is like the pinnacle of golf membership. I'm a member at a really nice club here in San Francisco, kind of well-known, well-regarded. And I'm like at least a tier or two down from where this is. There's a group of the most exclusive of golf courses in America called SCAPS, C-A-P-S, and the A stands for Augusta Nationals, where they hold the Masters. It was designed by Alistair McKenzie for Bobby Jones, one of the great all-time golfers, and and the symbol of goodness in golf. And so if you're a member at Augusta National, it's a really, that's a big achievement. You've become somebody in life, as you would at the other exclusive golf courses that are part of the SCAPS group. And if Georgia isn't worthy of doing business with the All-Star game, then why would this commissioner of baseball retain his membership at Augusta National? I got to say, I'm not a huge fan of Marco Rubio, but that's a good one. That's a really good one. And by the way, why aren't they getting rid of the 81 games a year that they play at the Atlanta Braves stadium if it's so despicable to do business in Georgia, if this law is so bad? Yesterday we went through this, by the way. People who are looking at summaries of the law, what the changes are sort of like, how is this sort of racist? And actually, what you're starting to see too is a number of black people, celebrities, are saying, "Hey, wait a second. Why are they saying we can't get IDs? We have IDs. We know how to get them." And here's the crazy thing too. I didn't realize this. Because a few weeks ago, when I was saying you have to show voter ID. You have to show. You should. It's the weirdest thing. I'm in California. I walk in, and they don't ask for your ID. They just ask for your name, and they ask you to sign the book. It's the craziest thing. And the other interesting thing is that when you sign the book and they go to do signature match, they don't put any effort into that. If you write X there, they're just gonna say done. That's it. It's just a thing that they check off the list. Nobody's really checking on those IDs. But in any event, it's the weirdest thing to show up and not show an ID. And the polls show, 77% of Americans are on board. They want people to show their IDs when they show up. And black people are like, we have IDs. Why are you saying we can't get IDs? What are we, idiots? They're not. They're not putting up with this. And here's the thing I didn't know about Georgia. If you can't afford an ID, the state will give you one for free. And the reason why I bring this up is because a few weeks ago, someone on Twitter was saying, it's a poll tax. It's already been considered illegal. It's a poll tax. Well, there's no tax involved. First of all, everybody has an ID. Who can't afford an ID? Who doesn't have an ID? It's ridiculous, number one. Number two, in Georgia, they mitigate even that ridiculous problem by saying, we'll give you an ID in order to make it so that you can vote. Now, who's against that? And as you get into the details, you don't have to pour into it, but just look at the summaries of the bill. There's nothing crazy about it. And so in any event, you're seeing this backlash, and you're going to see more of this hypocrisy pointed out. Hypocrisy is sort of not pointing at hypocrisy. I don't know how persuasive it is. I don't know if it actually changes a lot of minds, but it does. What it can be effective in is halting momentum. So like the Democrats might have had momentum with this when they were on the attack against the Georgia law, but they clearly lost momentum, because when people point out the hypocrisy, then the energy dissipates from the people who are in support. And so that's very helpful. And one other point I'll make before I move on to the next topic. We have a voting system that is clearly in need of a total overhaul. I've talked about this topic before. We have a voting system where no one seems to know how to appropriately file complaints, and how they're going to be reviewed, and who's going to review them. And I've said this also, that a lot of you have lawyers, very expensive lawyers, who are filing complaints, and the complaints were never looked at because the lawyers didn't have standing. And these incredibly successful and expensive, consequently, lawyers are, they don't know whether or not they have standing to file, file complaints on voting irregularities. What kind of a system is this? The system should be, you should have an app on your phone where all the complaints get filed by state, and you should be able to track each one and where it is in the process. And the process ought to be really clear. We don't have anything remotely like that. So when you have a system where $1,000 an hour lawyers don't know whether or not they have standing to challenge something regarding voter fraud, you can guarantee voter fraud is going to happen every single time. Every single time. I mean, look at what happened here. All they had to do was have this sort of convoluted attack on election integrity, or on the outcome of the election, and these multiple lawsuits come in, and all of them get turned away because of standing. And the media just declares, here's the winner. And next thing you know, Joe Biden's in the White House. Very strange thing. And so this brings me to my next topic, which is the new game plan. I probably should have kept in the order that I was in, but this is just too nice of a segue. We as Republicans, we just need a new game plan, because for many of us on the on this side of the aisle, it's not just being on this side of the aisle. Look, if Donald Trump was going to lose, I would be like, oh, Donald Trump is going to lose, and we have to do things to change that outcome. But I have to tell you, there was just no scenario where I saw him losing that election. I mean, look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a buffoon. He was a buffoon in his prime. Now he's a cognitively impaired buffoon. It's sort of sad. I don't even like to say it, just because he's, elderly and, fragile, frankly. And, but, we need a new game plan. We need something to combat this, because if what we think happened actually happened, Joe Biden became president because they did all kinds of shenanigans, and then the media just declared him the winner, and that was it. If that's the future, then we need to come up with something new. I think that's what, obviously what January 6th was all about. I mean, people were like, holy geez, if we have no redress, then yeah, we got to come here. We got to let these politicians know we're not putting up with their crap. And the backlash has quelled that for the moment, but it's that frustration will come back. And what you see happening in Georgia is a step in the right direction. I'm a little leery of it, truth be told, just because I felt like Georgia Republicans, I kind of feel like they were supportive of the, of whatever happened, any of the shenanigans that happened. They didn't really aggressively investigate. That's what at least would have felt like to me, and what it looked like to me. So because they didn't aggressively, approach the or address those voter irregularities, it kind of looked like they were in on the game. And that's why I'm not super excited about the law itself. However, at least they did something. And I was talking to Scott Pressler about this, and Scott's mission is to work on election integrity, because that sort of thing that we took for granted, that sort of baseline thing upon which this whole system doesn't work, if it's the foundation is faulty, is clearly cracking. I mean, so many people are furious and deflated, and ultimately will be angry if they feel like they have no voice. If someone in Washington and in their state governments are just dictating life down to them and the rules by which we all live. So we definitely need to address this matter, and fast. And the Democrats appear to be really more concerned about delivering the kind of just delivering the agenda that they want. I mean, think about this. I was talking to a friend of mine a little bit ago who's particularly concerned about the wealth tax. He's wealthy, but he's also concerned about the impact on the economy and on the U.S. and this was an idea that was floated and championed by Elizabeth Warren during her presidential run. It was rejected because even European countries have pushed back on it. It didn't work. They repealed all of them. But what's interesting is that you keep hearing about the wealth tax because another friend of mine told me that, an insider in Washington told me that a lot of the Warren people are in there running the show in the White House. So you can expect to see whatever the Warren agenda is and you can see a lot of it, including this wealth tax. But if we get a wealth tax in place, or if we get the rest of the Warren/Biden agenda in place, and people feel like they have no recourse to go to fight it because the electoral process is rigged against them, it's a bad scene. And I think Democrats are deluding themselves that people will put up with it forever. And it's not moving in a direction that I would recommend. I'd urge them to reconsider and move back towards a more robust. Listen, Democrats were thriving and doing just fine, with their constituencies without having to cheat. But if they cheat, that's I think a step too far, and they're going to end up regretting it. So, but in the meantime, on the other side of the aisle, Republicans need to address election integrity and find a way of getting a hold of our own media and other resources, because right now, if you think about it, I don't have to think very hard. Democrats control local governments, they control a lot of state governments, but they certainly control most of the cities, most of the big cities, huge populations there. They control education. All the public school teachers are Democrats. I know like 2 in San Francisco who are Republicans. They control the media, they control Hollywood, they control Wall Street, and so they have a lot going forward, and they can push a pretty nasty agenda ahead, one that's certainly counter to the mainstream of the United States, and they can keep pushing back against it and sort of ease off the gas whenever things get a little too hot for them. But they're in control, and they have all these the schools. I mean, they have all these sort of programming blocks and power blocks organized for themselves. So we need to get our game together on the Republican side of the aisle. We need to get some financing. We need to get a grip on this education system issue. It's no joke anymore. I mean, you really have to get you have to at least get vouchers going and have the money follow the kid with school choice. And a whole thing. So over the next week, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the elements of what I think the game plan should include. You've already heard some of these items, and I look forward to talking more about that, because we need a kind of a fundamental change. And here's an example of it. Let's just continue to switch. We'll end on another light note. If you can pull up that Pelosi article. So we've already talked about this. This is sort of an update on a story that was already shown a while ago, and people get really people just wonder, how did Nancy Pelosi make so much money? She's been in politics for 35 years. I think she won election first in 87, but she got involved in California state politics just before that. So over 37 years, getting close to 40 years now, she's been in politics. And but she and her husband are amongst the wealthiest people in Congress. And let me just tell you, there aren't that many people. I mean, look, a lot of wealthy people in San Francisco, but not a lot of them made the kind of money that they made while their one spouse was in politics. And, they say, oh, her husband's in finance, and he's also a member of my club. I've never met him there, but, so we probably in some circle, our circles overlap in some places. But to become that wealthy is a very rare thing in the United States, and B, to get it out of politics is almost unheard of. And so here's an example of one of the little tricks that they did, and that is, this whole Biden business is now pushing people to pick up electric cars, and in a shocking turn of events, Paul Pelosi. Let me just pull this up here. Back in December, Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, invested between $500,000 and $1 million in the famous electric car company Tesla, financial disclosures show. Due to the massive electric car subsidies proposed in Biden's infrastructure plan, Tesla is poised to be a big winner from Biden's plan should it go through. And due to her husband's massive investment, Pelosi could personally financially benefit as Tesla grows from the subsidies, as a Free Beacon reported on Friday. So, it doesn't stop. It just never stops. And she's going to keep doing it. And the media is not going to challenge her. They might ask her a question and she'll be like, what? And just sort of get offended by the question and then move on. And nobody's ever going to do anything. There's not going to be no congressional investigation, no media, no reporters going to dig into it, because it's sort of small potatoes when it comes to the overall scheme of the great ripoff of the American working and middle class. But it's happening, and it goes to show that they don't care anymore. They'll do stuff right out in the open. You got Hunter Biden talking about crawling around smoking Parmesan cheese because he's so addicted to crack, and somehow the mainstream media refused to look at that as a potential area of weakness where the president could be compromised. So they don't ask him, and they don't dig into those questions. They ask him a couple of questions, but don't dig into it. I mean, his whole story is preposterous on its face. He won't talk about how much money he made when he was at Burisma, and they didn't even bother asking him. This is really creepy. They didn't even bother asking him about how much money he made from China. Now, I can tell you right now, my guess is that if he was a partner in that deal, that he got millions and millions of dollars. But they don't ask the question, and I'm happy to give you the numbers and break it down on how he made lots of money. But listen, he probably got a little finder's fee, a small percentage finder's fee for bringing the money into the firm with which he was working. And by the way, you don't have to have a very big percentage of $1.5 billion investment until it starts to add up. And keep in mind, by the way, when China invested in that fund, typically the fees on that fund, from those funds, are about 1% of the amount invested. So if at $1.5 billion, that's a $15 million a year income stream for investing that money. That's a lot of money. And you think Hunter didn't get a piece of that? And by the way, they usually get a percentage of the upside if they're successful with the investment. So that company made a lot of money, and that's not a compromising position for the president's son. Okay. Anyway, lastly, I don't know. This is going to bring. I'm going to actually probably bring some controversy onto myself for saying this. Let's move over to the Caitlyn story here. So the Newsom recall is going to get on the ballot, and when there was a recall for Gray Davis in 2000, what was that, 2005 or 3 or 6 or something like that, whenever it was, I think it was 6. Like over 100 candidates, filed to run for governor. And in fact, it's funny. A friend of mine just sent me a tweet last time. He said it's like a $3,000 filing fee and a bunch of signatures, not even a ton of them, and you can be on the ballot and then just take a snapshot of it and frame it on your wall. He told me he's going to file to run for governor. There will be a ton of people running, and 3 or 4 will be serious. And apparently, Caitlyn Jenner is rolling her name into the mix here, and is looking at running for governor. And I don't think that her, that her transition to living as a woman is really as big an issue as the fact that she's really kind of not that interesting. I don't know, if she has much to say. But anyway, so we're going to see lots of this happening. It's going to be funny, and we'll have a little laugh about it as time goes on. But you're going to see lots of funny people running for stepping up and running for governor. But one thing I did want to mention here, and this maybe will get me in trouble, and this is a perception thing, and I haven't researched it, and I'm happy to take a look at it. But this just came up before the start of the report, so I thought I'd bring it in. But I have found that that, believe it or not, there is a surprising, I would think that there's a surprising number of trans women who are actually on the right side of the political spectrum. And I saw here earlier this person who I didn't really know before, but is a trans woman named Charlotte Clymer. She came onto my radar yesterday, and she's clearly on the left. And she put out a tweet saying that Caitlyn Jenner does not represent us. And But I don't know about that. I think that there's a fairly solid percentage of trans women who are actually Republicans and on the right side of the aisle. It's the weirdest thing. We in San Francisco fielded a candidate who ran for state senate last year, who was a trans woman, was on our central committee, supported her. She didn't make it into the top 2, but she was on the ballot. And, had she been a little stronger on the issues, I think she might have had a chance of moving on. It was actually a tough race, maybe not. But the point is, we supported her. And she was willing to put her name out there. And, I don't think she's alone. The other group of people, it seems like there seems to be a very high percentage of, it's like you have trans women who are Republicans. But then you also, I've noticed this, and maybe it's just a perception thing, but it seems like there are a lot of trans women who are in like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, particularly Antifa. And they're in fights, like if you see videos of a lot of trans women in Seattle and in Portland who are, fighting those fights. I just find that interesting that they're sort of to be on, a wide, both sides, and really open and out there about their politics on both sides of the political spectrum. It just seems really interesting to me. So anyway, we'll see what happens with Caitlyn's candidacy, if it materializes, and how she presents herself as a candidate. Who knows? Maybe she'll be interesting. I think she's going to have, she's going to be sort of a novelty candidacy, just because the other people who are announced have been through this before, and they're going to be get a lot of support from Republicans and from other quarters. So Caitlyn's got a work cut out for her. But listen, throw your hat in the ring. What the hell? Maybe you add something of value to the conversation, and that's always welcome. So anyway, on that note, I'm happy to say that I got through this report with just a small modicum of success, and that I'm kind of feeling a little under weather after getting the Johnson & Johnson one-shot COVID vaccine yesterday. Woke up in the middle of the night with definitely a little kind of like flu symptoms, took some Aleve, and managed to get back to sleep ultimately. And then this just not long ago, I took some Aleve too, but I'm definitely feeling the effects now and a little under the weather. But I hope it didn't impact the discussion that we had today. And we're gonna try and make some changes here in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna have some guests on and do some different things to keep evolving the report. And I hope you can join us for it. And in the meantime, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RealJohnDennis, and on Facebook and on YouTube at John Dennis Report, especially on YouTube. If you wouldn't mind subscribing, that'd be great. Really would appreciate it. So thanks for joining. We will see you on Thursday. Until then, have a great couple of days.